To bring in our panel now, Herb London, London Center for Policy Research President, Mike Baker, former CIA operative and now the co-founder of Diligence LLC, and Beverly Hallberg, District Media Group President. Herb, let me start with you. First of all, it's great seeing you. It's been a while.
Oh, nice to see you.
Everyone's still skeptical, but I think there's an optimism beneath that obvious skepticism that wasn't there before, because we are witnessing overtures from Kim Jong-un that 3 or 4 months ago no one thought would happen.
Well, one of the things is there's no question about these preliminaries. And what Kim Jong-un is doing is clearly setting the stage for negotiations. But I think it's very important for us to take our eye right on that target. And the target is the denuclearization of North Korea. We've got to make sure that the nukes are taken out of North Korea. The North Koreans believe that there should be an entirely denuclearized peninsula. But if that means taking the United States out of Korea, or taking the United States out of Asia, or taking the United States out of the region, that is clearly unacceptable. So I think it's important to understand where we come from and where they come from.
We actually have some video here of President Trump talking about this very issue, the denuclearization of Northern Korea. Let's take a listen.
My proudest achievement will be, this is a part of it, but will be when we denuclearize that entire peninsula. This is what people have been waiting for a long time. Nobody thought we could be on this track in terms of speed.
Actually, you mentioned the entire peninsula, Beverly, and of course, what was interesting a few weeks ago was when word came that Kim Jong-un was okay with some military, U.S. military presence there, even after we get rid of the demilitarized zone, and perhaps even once they get rid of their nukes.
Yeah, and even with President Trump and what he was saying there, he seems very certain that something is going to move forward with denuclearizing North Korea. This was a 90-minute meeting between Mike Pompeo, of course, the Secretary of State, and Kim Jong-un. So there's a lot that they discussed in that time, and the president does seem sure this would be a huge victory. But I agree, we need to proceed very cautiously. They're really, when I think about Kim Jong-un, I keep thinking, what's in it for him? He hasn't all of a sudden turned into a good guy. He is not someone who really wanted to release these prisoners. So what is he getting out of this? So we need to continue to proceed cautiously. And I think even importantly on this is making sure the optics. So when there is the meeting between the president and Kim Jong-un, that there aren't handshakes with large smiles. We need to make sure we're not giving him a platform of legitimacy.
Well, Mike, to a certain degree, though, Kim Jong-un has earned some credit here, right? I mean, he did release these hostages. He had the meeting with his counterpart in the South. And he's speaking like none of his predecessors, his grandfather or his father, have necessarily spoken before.
Yeah, I think his survival instincts are kicking in, frankly, Charles. And I think he's looking at, look, he's not suicidal, and so he looks at this and he realizes that there's not that many options on the old decision tree at this point. And the Chinese have made the same calculation here. So I think he's doing what he believes is necessary for him to do the most important thing in his mind, which is to stay in power in some fashion. Look, one of the other things that's really interesting about this is how just the other day, you can't. Nothing happens in a bubble. So the Iranian deal is scuttled by the president, and all of a sudden, you've got all people's heads are exploding, saying, "Oh, this is sending the wrong message to Kim Jong-un. He's going to think we're not good for our word." And I'm thinking it's just the other way. Kim Jong-un looks at what we did with the Iranian deal, and I think he's processing it in this way. I think he's saying to himself, this current president, President Trump, will not stand for an inadequate deal. Right. And I think that's what he understands.
Right. So, Herb, what if through all of this, nothing comes of this? There's still a stalemate. What's the option for the U.S.? Because President Trump has to back up his tough talk and his tough stance.
Well, you don't know what's going to happen in this high wire act that the president is engaged in.
I'm just saying, assuming we don't come through with the deal,
understand.
And Kim clings to his nukes.
It seems to me that the president is going to have to walk away from these negotiations.
Right. And
I
then
think
what?
that Pompeo has already made it clear that there's going to be a denuclearized North Korea.
One way or the other.
Yeah, one way or another. That's going to happen. And I feel very confident about that. That's one of the reasons why he's there. And it's also true that Kim has gone to China. Why do you think he went to China? The Chinese are saying, you know what, you can be the stalking horse for us. We want the United States out of the Pacific Basin. One of the ways to do that is to talk about getting the United States out of Asia. Start with Korea, but getting the United States out of Asia. Try to broaden that conversation.
Right. Beverly, what does America give Kim Kim Jong-un in return for giving up nuclear weapons, which, let's be quite honest about this, is the only currency that he has. It's the only source of respect outside of the Hermit Kingdom.
Well, there's even been some speculation and some reporting about how strong his nuclear arsenal is. There were some reports saying that maybe even a building where they were housed collapsed. So I wonder why all of a sudden he's coming to the negotiating table. Once again, this isn't because he's a nice guy. What does he get? I do think that there's an aspect of this where he loves the spotlight. He loves popularity. He wants to be looked at as a major player on the world scale. And that's why I think we do have to be very careful when it comes to his ego, when it makes him look like he's legitimate. Let's not forget, while we got 3 individuals back, there are still over 100,000 political prisoners, many of his own people, who are still in prison there. So we have to treat this very carefully, that we're not giving him the legitimacy that he wants.
Right, Mike,
Two very great points.
Okay.
One, the human rights issues have not been considered and should be. But the other point is, just look at the South Korean economy, look at the North Korean economy. $1 trillion economy, $1 billion economy. You want to know why he's at the negotiating table? He's looking for aid.
Mike, I know it's tough to do, but we've got less than a minute. Can you handicap how you see this going from here?
Yeah, I think we have to be very pragmatic and realistic, as we've already said. We have to be willing to walk away from the table. And I think the heaviest lift here is what we see with any effort to contain a weapons program. It's a verification. So if we cannot get to a point where, if we happen to get that far down the road, if we can't get to a point where we have absolute verification, look, we were willing to do a deal with Iran, the previous administration, where we didn't have access to any of their military sites, including parts, and that was a real problem with that deal. We have to be able to lock down verification. If we can't, we have to be willing to step away from the table and say, sorry, maybe we'll try it again some other day.
All right, thank you all very, very much. Really appreciate it.